so many of you here today. I am Amrita Devaya. I'm the head of Civil Service Communications in UK Civil Service, and it's my pleasure to be facilitator and moderator of this session as we look at competing for talent and how government can recruit the talent it needs. So I've got a brilliant panel here from all over the world, and we're going to discuss how we can attract that talent, how we can retain that talent, and how we can share both insight and expertise and best practice from both the public and private sector. I'm joined by Nicholas Barton, founder and CEO of the Barton Partnership, Fiona Ryland, who is Government Chief People Officer at the UK Government, Peter van den Bruane, who is General Advisor of the Director General of Recruitment and Development from Belgium, and Eileen Lords-Lizada, who is Commissioner at the Civil Service Commission for the Philippines. I'm going to ask each of our esteemed panellists a question and to set out their stall. And remember, overall, we're trying to find out how can we be recruiting the talent that we need. So, Nicholas, I'm going to turn to you.
Thank you.
What can we learn from the private sector that can help us drive talent to the public sector?
Yeah, I mean, so good morning. Good to see everyone this morning. So I've been recruiting into the private sector for about 25, 30 years now, and I think one of the key learnings that we've observed over that time, that I've observed over that time, is the organisations that are winning the talent for war are now crafting their story away from what makes them great, but actually why they are great. And by that I mean they're aligning their message around their vision, their mission, their values, and creating that purpose-driven statement. And it's interesting now that we can actually now align that to an improvement, a significant improvement in the performance of these organisations by actually driving now a more purpose-driven culture and environment. So rather than going out saying we are the best company in the world because we do the best products in the world because we've got the best offices in the world, they're now aligning the message much more around actually why are they doing this? You know, what are they looking to create? What are they looking to give back? And actually now what that means for you as an individual and how you can craft that into your own personal story as a purpose for yourself. You know, what's going to get you out of bed in the morning? I think the second thing as well, and certainly from a public sector point of view, is all around the actual process, the interview process, the recruitment process itself. A lot of organisations now, again, are refining their processes and are becoming more successful simply by creating a journey for that candidate through a process. It is crucial, obviously, for anyone interviewing that, you know, you're validating, you're qualifying the candidate for the job. Have they got the capability? Are they the right cultural fit? But I think where companies fail is they lose sight of the fact that, you know, 50% of that conversation has to be about, you know, why they should join. You know, what is it that's in for what's in it for them? You know, what is it about that company that they should get excited about? And so there needs to be a sell, and there needs to be a journey, and there needs to be a vision around that as well. And so I think when we talk about success in the private sector, and certainly some of the key learnings that we can bring into the public sector, certainly around our market, so we specialise on strategy, transformation, policy, you know, both on a permanent interim basis. It is absolutely about crafting a message about the why, but it's also about creating the right experience for that candidate, that they feel that they are being taken on a journey. The Institute for Government published a report about a month ago talking about the increased level of churn across the civil service and across central government. They talked about salary. I'm sure we'll get onto that this morning. They talked about low morale. I think it's pretty evident that that is, you know, rampant through public sector right now. But they really also talked about the onerous recruitment processes that many of the central government departments, you know, go through. And I think that's certainly one of the areas that could easily be improved to increase and improve the experience that any candidate going for an interview into any government department, civil service department, can experience, to really understand actually what is the opportunity for them, not just in terms of this job, but where this role could lead to down the line, and eliminating any concerns or doubts around any glass ceilings that could be in place within any government departments. It is about that long-term journey. It's about the opportunity to give back, that social purpose that's so important. And it's about giving them confidence that there is, a career within the public sector, not just a job, and giving them confidence about where this could lead down the line and what's in it for them. So I think those are some of the key learnings that we've seen, certainly from our side, that we're bringing into the public sector.
Thank you, Nick. And Fiona, Nick just spoke about the cell. What is in it for you? So can you tell us, please, what the UK Civil Service is doing to explain why people should come and work with us?
Yeah, no. First of all, good morning. It's great to be here. In answering the question, I'm actually going to cover a lot of what Nick said. So I think we're pretty aligned. I also wanted to talk about the story and making the case for the great jobs in the civil service, but I also wanted to touch on the process as well, because I think it's a really important part of bringing talented people in. So what are we doing? So we are looking at what we call our employer brand, but really that is just a way of saying, why should people join us, and then why should they stay and develop their careers? And when I look at a lot of the recruitment material we use here in the UK for civil service jobs, it can be quite dry and technical and a bit bureaucratic. And when it talked about, people really want purpose, that should be an area where we really win. The mission and the purpose in the UK government is extraordinarily fulfilling. And not just that, but in terms of people's roles, the roles that we have in the civil service are of a scale and a complexity and an interest that I think it's difficult to find elsewhere. But I think historically we've not managed to get that across in terms of our recruitment materials, our job packs, our job descriptions. So we're working hard in terms of really telling that story, both from a mission and purpose perspective, but as we discussed, what's in it for people, not just that really interesting job, but career progression, skills and investment in terms of people's training and capability. I think the other thing that we're doing is really looking at the intersection between departments, professions and locations. So really starting to be able to talk to the job market in particular areas. So the Darlington Economic Campus in the UK, a bit further north than London. We're actually talking to the local job market there around the Darlington Economic Campus. There's 8 departments, but we're talking less about the individual departments and more about just what is it like to work there and the opportunities. And because we've got 8 departments there with similar roles, the career opportunities are much easier for people once they join. The other thing is we're working with departments because also each department has got its own mission and purpose, and that's absolutely right. So from a central perspective, we're looking at what is the story across the whole civil service, what's true when you join and what's true as you move across departments. So we are working really hard to, and the benefits of that is that we hopefully will connect with people that have never thought of a career in the civil service because they read our boring job adverts and think it's not for them. So hopefully what that will mean is we get a more diverse set of people applying, more diverse workforce, bringing different skills and different experience, which will only make us better in terms of the delivery of our services and policies to the UK. The other thing I did want to touch on is process, though. And again, when I look across the civil service, our recruitment process takes quite a long time. I can see some smiles in front of me here. The other thing that I would observe, having come through the process myself about 18 months ago, is it's very much about assessing the individuals and not necessarily allowing candidates to assess us and kind of really sell the opportunities in that way. So we're tackling that, quite apart from the stuff I've already spoken about, we're tackling that in a few ways. We're really looking at each part of the process and evaluating it. So does it add value to the hiring manager? Does it add value to the candidate? Does it mean that we recruit high quality, diverse people? A great example is we're looking at the personal statement that is often part of our recruitment process at the moment and whether that does add value. We're deploying automation in our recruitment process, so that will help speed it up. But we're just also really looking at what parts of the process, deliver those high quality, diverse candidates. And we're also measuring that consistently across the civil service. So we've agreed some time metrics, some cost metrics, and some quality metrics, which will really allow us to understand which parts of the civil service are really harnessing innovation and driving it forward, and where we can help. So hopefully that was a good taster of what we're doing.
Lots of really interesting points there, Fiona, which we will definitely come back to as part of the Q&A. So please also make sure you've got your questions ready. I'll be asking you for those shortly. Now to you, Peter. Can you tell us how we enable those initiatives that we talk of? How do we become more innovative in the way that we attract new talent, and then how we retain them as well?
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I'll stretch my legs, if that's okay, for you, because I come from Belgium, and then Brussels is a long way from here. Probably not geographically, but politically it is. In the Belgian civil service, public service where I work, of course we do recruit, and I work in the department that is as well responsible for the recruitment and the development of competencies and staff. Now, 6 months ago, last summer, slightly more than 6 months ago, 9 months ago, last summer, my son was having a difficult choice to make, because he graduated some time ago from law school, and he'd been applying for different jobs, and at virtually the same time he was offered 2 pretty interesting jobs, one in the public service, one in a private sector company. Now, I'm being a good dad, so I thought, let's not influence his decision. So I explained about public service and so on, but I basically said, Kevin, his name is Kevin, it's your call. I mean, you choose whatever. And I should say I felt slightly reassured that now, when we're talking about trying to attract new people in the civil service, we're kind of using the same weapons, if I may say it like this, than the private sector companies. We have a team which for some years has been using the name employer branding. I mean, when I started my career a long time ago, that name didn't exist. You were happy as a person, you were allowed into the state and a state position. Now we have a team focusing on employer branding. We're trying to focus on telling new talented staff why it's great to work in the civil service. We're trying to make sure that they know there's going to be a work-life balance. We talk about possibilities for future career development and so on. So basically the kind of same stuff that private sector companies are doing as well. And eventually my son decided to go for the private sector company because as part of the package, they offered him as well company car, and a rather fancy one. I don't know about the public service in UK or other countries, but I can assure you that unless you're the real top official, there's no company cars in the picture. Last December, when we were sitting around the Christmas table, my son and his girlfriend, Marta, were there, and we talked about how is it in your job, and I got the kind of impression that he was like, yeah, okay. And I have the impression that some of his initial enthusiasm had kind of slowly disappeared. And I remember saying to my wife, like, I mean, do you think everything's okay? He said, well, just we'll see what it gives. And then just about a month ago, my son told us, well, there was this interesting job opening in another function that one of our friends sent me through LinkedIn for a job in a civil service organization, and I decided to go for it, and I got it. And I was like, I mean, you haven't even been there for 6 months? Okay, he's 26, 6 months is like half a lifetime experience for all the civil servants and us. Civil servants don't stay anymore for their entire careers. So some of the original things that we've been used as trying to allure and try to attract talented new people, like, you'll have a job for the rest of your life, permanent job safety. It almost sounds as a threat to talented young people. Oh my gosh, will I be condemned to stay there for my entire career? And then sometimes we even feel like inclined to talk about pension schemes. I mean, that did not interest our 20-year-old or 30-year-old talented people. But basically, one of the reasons why he decided to change is because he found out that after the facade, after the beautiful, great job description, and after the interesting office space and the many talks about being able to work in a flexible way, there was another reality behind that. And that's the risk that we're facing ourselves in the civil service. So yes, it's a very good idea to change our job descriptions and make them more alluring. But I've been in positions myself where HR asked me, but Peter, I mean, wow, your job description looks like this. There's going to be plenty of candidates, but it may be a trap. And this is why, apart from the recruitment, and I know that this is the main topic of this morning's discussion, I'd like to talk also about retaining. Because it doesn't end when they are there, it just starts when they are there. And if I see the number of turnover we have, not only in the private sector, but especially also in public services, sometimes we lose the talented people that we've been trying to recruit for so long because we don't take care of some of the basic requirements. One of the things my son mentioned, like they said, okay, we're a flexible organization, but when he was 5 minutes late, arriving at 9:05, in a flex work situation, not for a meeting, but just for himself, the reaction was like, well, working hours are 9 to 5. And in terms of being in favor of flexible careers and giving autonomy, he found himself with a micromanaging boss. Now, there's lots of micromanaging bosses still in the federal administration in Belgium as well. If people, people join organizations, but they leave bosses. We spend a lot of time sometimes recruiting talented people, but if we don't pay attention to building flexible career paths, walk the talk, try to do behind the screens and invest in management and leadership, because yes, it's leadership and managers that play a vital role in retaining talent, we may lose them very soon. And then finally, we link this directly to training and development. And yes, one of the reasons my son decided to change also was because in the new public service where he applied, he had a clear view on future career paths and flexibility. He had lots of learning opportunities. And I was kind of surprised when 2 weeks ago, he said, if I do this and get this possibility, maybe in 10 years' time, I can have this or that position in that organization. And his Spanish girlfriend looked at me like, do you understand him? He's talking about 10 years from now. He didn't even stay 6 months in the previous organization. Now, all of a sudden, he's talking about in 10 years from now, because that public service had been able to describe flexible career paths and learning opportunities. And they were indeed not just using this as a publicity tool, but they had systems in place that guaranteed competency development and talent development. And this is something we also turn to if we don't find the right qualified people. I don't know about you here, but I can assure you that in Belgium, in the public service, sometimes it's very hard to find certain profiles. Functional analysts, for instance, hard to find. Data analysts, hard to find. We launched systems, and we can get into more detail later, maybe in the discussion. We launched systems where we're recruiting people from inside the civil service, but also from the private sector that do not have the right qualifications, but have the learning potential, have the right attitude, and we invest in them, and we give them a year-long training to become the specialist we're looking for. And okay, we're not a university. We can't give them a university degree, but who cares? If they're good on the job, and sometimes the brightest IT guys are not there with lots of certificates, but maybe they've been using IT tools already as teenagers. These are the people we want to have. Because we feel if we focus only on knowledge and competencies, and yeah, this is what we've been testing for so long, and this, I admit, even in Belgium, selection procedures take a long time to enter the civil service, And basically, I feel because we test a lot of things that seem to be vital today and may be obsolete and out of date tomorrow. I mean, we heard in the introduction speech about the arrival of AI. Are we sure that the talents we're recruiting today will still be doing the same thing tomorrow once we introduce AI? So we need to be flexible. To sum up, we feel that recruiting, it is important, and this is what we're here to talk about, but it's not only about recruitment, it's equally about retaining and training, and we link these three together. When you start working for an organization, it's like you enter a relationship. When you find a partner, you first try to select the partner. But that's not the end of it, that's usually the beginning of it in a relationship. It's about keeping the relationship alive and retaining. And I'm sure if you'd ask my wife, she'd be inclined to say, and it's about the training as well in the relationship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Peter. Again, Eileen, Peter talked a lot about telling that story about what it is as an organisation we are offering individuals when they apply. So I'm really interested to hear what you guys are doing in the Philippines to really demonstrate the benefits of public service and attract talent across all of your locations.
Thank you. A pleasant morning to everyone. We traveled 17 hours to be able to be here and address all of you, so we hope we will make sense this morning. The fight for talent is tougher than ever before. Okay. It is not enough that we provide a competitive salary. One of the challenges that the Philippine Civil Service Commission is facing is the hiring of competent talents to complement our bureaucracy. We are transforming a 124-year-old agency, and we are in charge of 1.9 million government employees. The Philippines is an archipelagic country. We have more or less 7,640 islands, depending on the tides. So how do we compete for talents? So allow me to share with you the initiatives in terms of recruitment policies and practices, compensation and benefits, our career and personal development goals, and our work environment. For one to enter the Philippine Civil Service, you have to pass a competitive exam, which is given twice a year. More than 1 million applicants take these exams. Only 16% pass this exam. But we have exceptions. If you are a Latin honor graduate like magna cum laude, summa cum laude, then you are exempted from taking these exams. If you are either a board or a bar passer, like me, I am a lawyer by profession, I did not take that exam, but you will be exempted. Or if you graduate from a foreign school with honors, and you have special skills eligibility, then you will be granted a special eligibility. We advocate the equal opportunity principle, wherein those who belong to the specialized or vulnerable sector, we grant them applications for special eligibilities as well. We have a law that mandates us to set aside a certain percentage of our regular or plantilla position for persons with disabilities or those belonging to the IPs. Lately, we are opening now the Civil Service Commission, and we will be undergoing training for our Filipino Sign Language. We want to give voice to the voiceless, and we want to empower them that they will be able to transact with the government. And for our frontline services, we will be able to hire these people belong to the vulnerable groups. So with this arrangement, how do we compete with talents? We have an online, it is a sponsored government online career fair. So wherever you are in any of these islands, as long as you have internet, you will be able to apply. And so how do we publish our positions? We engage in social media, we join career fairs, and we likewise have our online portal, employment portal, such as the Job Street. So we have opportunities given to all of these people. We have a flexi-work arrangement. Our policies on flexi-work arrangement allows government officials and employees to manage current and emergent disasters or calamities. We have one, flexi work arrangement, flexi meaning work from home, work from a satellite office, work from a regular fixed place, staggered working hours, compressed 4-day work week, or a combination or any combination of all these 5. So we take good care of all our employees as well, and we have a compensation package that has been standardized through all these regions and islands, allowing an enabling environment to everyone. Likewise, we have a top-up bonus for our employees. We give them a performance-based bonus, or we call it the PBB, when one is able to meet their respective targets. So with all of this, we would like to claim, and we pride ourselves in, well, we are in government to serve our country, one. But over and above, we give paramount consideration to the welfare of our employees. We have other special benefits such as the perks and privileges of having their special leaves. Over and above vacation leave and sick leave, we give them parental leaves, solo parent leave, adoptive leave, and we have a rehabilitation leave if ever you get injured. And we have a law, violence against women. If you fall under this category, we give you special days for you to recuperate and recover from whatever tragedy that has been under your violation against women. So we pride ourselves in saying we take good care of our own. And we think that we are doing the right thing because more or less we have 1 million government applicants taking our exams. And they stay with us. The minimum number of years is 15 years in service. Our optional age of retirement is 60, our mandatory is 65. But we are pushing to lower the optional age of retirement to allow our employees to engage in other avenues and other chapters in their lives that they want to pursue. That's it that we want to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eileen. I'm now going to open the floor to questions. Does anyone have a burning question that they'd like to ask? If you just stick your hand up. Yes, do you want to stand up? And I think a microphone is coming for you.
Good morning. Thank you for all of your insights. I have a question for both Eileen and Fiona. Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
So Fiona, you mentioned automation in the process. In your experience, what part of the process does automation actually improve? Mm-hmm. And then for Eileen, is there consideration for the roles that are held for special eligibility for when there are no applications coming through for those positions that have been kept aside? What happens then? Like, what would happen if you don't have any eligible applicants? Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I take?
Fiona, do you want to take the automation?
I'll do the automation one first. And I was specifically talking about automation rather than generative AI, which I think will have different applications. So in the recruitment process, I think there's a couple of ways that automation can really help. The first is joining up systems so that when you apply online, which most of our applicants do, that should be the last time you have to put that information in. So even if data has to transfer between different systems, so the application system to the core HR system to generate an employment contract, for example, really that should be, with automation, we can join that up. So you're not putting the same data in multiple parts of the application process, which adds time in both from the person putting the data in, but also just the time it takes to kind of hand over that data. I also think that there's kind of basic checking of information that we are using automation to do. So again, just to make sure that actually when we are onboarding somebody, we've got all of that data, all of that information, all the checks that we're doing are automated. Because A, it speeds it up, B, it's a better candidate experience, but for the people that are helping with the recruitment process, they can help with more value-added kind of activity rather than just transferring data from one system to the other, or for double checking, the validation of that data. We are also looking at what opportunities there are for generative AI, and I think we're going to start with can generative AI help write job descriptions, for example, and then actually test what kind of applicants you would get to those job descriptions and that like recruitment material. But I think it's less straightforward than automation, but I think automation just speeds it up in terms of the data transfer.
Thank you, Fiona. And then, Eileen, the second part of the question was specifically about the jobs that are sort of kept aside and if there are no applicants.
This is what we call the dearth positions, or difficult or hard to fill positions. If there are dearth positions, then we do a study. Likewise, we open up the eligibility for scientists, example. It's kind of difficult to look for scientists to enter government service. So that's why we have a special skill eligibility for scientists. Like right now, if you look into our index of positions, never has it been there that we now have our Cybersecurity Crime Act. But where is the cybersecurity officer? Where are they? So now we are formulating and crafting our positions to allow entry for career path for those in the ICT experts. So we create.
Excellent, thank you. I think one of the things that I noticed that came out of each of your sort of opening statements was this idea about purpose and culture and how integral that is for us to be able to attract new talent into the civil and public service. I think what I'm really interested to understand, and I guess not to speak on behalf of the audience, but I imagine you are as well, but how do you balance that idea of attracting the talent, competing on that benefits and pay, particularly in the context of cost of living in the UK, and then also still create that culture where people feel that they are respected, they've given the opportunities, and they are able to develop their careers. It's quite a big question, I appreciate, in the public sector. Nick, you started talking about purpose and driven culture, so I'm going to hand to you first, and then Peter, and then obviously Eileen and Fiona, if you'd like to add.
Sure. I mean, I think that it's about balance, ultimately, at the end of the day, and that's an easy answer to give, but I think fundamentally that's what it comes down to. I think, as I said at the start in my talk, it's about qualifying and selling. It's about understanding their capability, but also making sure that they're engaged in the vision around what that department or organisation is looking to achieve. I mean, at the end of the day, the elephant in the room is going to be compensation and pay. Despite presenting the best possible picture and even defining, the greatest purpose that one could live up to, that individual needs to go home at the end of the day and pay their bills. And if compensation isn't where it needs to be for that person to even live at a sensible rate of living, then with all due respect, the greatest purpose in the world isn't going to get that person to sign up to that company. So I think there is an overriding challenge across the public sector around compensation and pay, which needs to be considered as part of that. But I think before even that's looked at, and to Fiona's point, there are quick fixes that can happen almost immediately around the process, around the engagement. I mean, I think that ultimately, in improving the current situation in terms of that journey for candidates going through the public sector, there's no one answer or one solution, but there are a number of quick fixes. The automation of processing. By coincidence, the UK's largest recruitment exhibition is taking place next door, looking at RecTech. RecTech now, as we call it, is one of the fastest growing industries now, and the programs and applications now to automate processes to improve engagement with candidates is phenomenal, right? But then you're dealing with red tape across different government departments and the process to perhaps adopt that. Now, I don't know. Obviously, Fiona's more qualified to talk about that, but it shouldn't be that complicated. The engagement process shouldn't be that convoluted. But to your question, it's about the balance of, if you've positioned the opportunity right, if you've convinced and presented the purpose right, then to an extent that can offset any doubts or question marks around compensation. But ultimately, to Eileen's point, I mean, the public sector to a certain extent is missing that performance bonus culture aspect. That really gives that person that additional drive and motivation.
No, thank you. Peter, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think basically that the main question is what motivates civil servants, what motivates public servants, what motivates us. And we try to find a balance between the extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And yes, pay and bonuses and whatever, it is an important extrinsic motivator. And this is why we had lots of changes in the Belgian federal administration over the last decades. The most important change that happened about 15 years ago was a huge change where salaries were compared to all different kind of public sector salaries, and adjustments were made so that basically salaries in the public service are competitive. We will never be able to offer the same flexibility in terms of financial bonuses. I mean, if I have a colleague in my office and she's doing a great job, even though I'd like to give her a bonus, I can't. I have to follow so many different rules and restrictions on that. But it is a requirement. Everyone will tell you, all studies will indicate that if the basic salary, basic financial compensations are not guaranteed, you're fighting an uphill battle. But I guess there's so much evidence that shows that offering additional money is usually a very short-term motivator. And this is, I think, where the intrinsic motivation comes into the picture. And there we like to make the link to values. And people are like this, but if you feel you're in life and you'd like to have a bigger house and an even bigger car and an even more brand new car, if this is one of your main motivators in life, then maybe you're not the person that will find his or her place in the public service. But if you feel like there's other things and the public service attitude comes into the picture there, well, this is maybe one of the hooks we may use to make a link, but always if the basic conditions are fulfilled. And sometimes I make the comparison with like being eco-friendly and liking the environment. Yes, I consider myself to be eco-friendly, and I hope most of you in this room are willing to go the extra mile to save our planet. But are you willing to pay 20% more for something which is recycled, 50% more, 200% more? There may be a limit. So people may be very much attracted by the civil service in terms of public service attitudes, but if in the end they're not going to be able to pay the mortgage for their house, they might think twice. And I'm talking about this in many other places all over the world. Sometimes people stand up and tell me, Peter, we're fighting an uphill battle. Salaries are just 30% of what a similar job in the private sector may offer. And then you have a problem.
Yeah, Fiona.
Yeah, I was just going to come in and add a few points. Yeah, I completely agree that you do need a level of salary that is going to be reasonably competitive. I also think, certainly in the UK, in the civil service and public sector, we generally have better pension provision than in the private sector, and I'm not sure that we always get that across. There is an element of, depending on where people are in their career, in their life, how important is that? But I think we do need to communicate that in a more impactful way so people understand that that is part of the deal. Where I feel we can over-index those career opportunities, training, coming in and working in, the most interesting, complex roles. And again, I think that's why it's important to get that across. But I do understand the importance of offering that kind of competitive salary for people as well.
No.
If I may
just go on, Peter, yeah.
Add one more thing. What we also did in order to compensate that kind of financial thing is completely change the career and promotion system. Because in most civil service or public service organizations, your salary is kind of dependent on the hierarchical function you have. And in the past in Belgium, we had a kind of, traditional system where you knew that the first 10 years of your career, you could never be a director general or whatever. Director generals were usually 50 plus. We completely changed the system. So now it is possible that you enter at the age of 25 that 2-3 years later, you make already first big promotion step with the salary attached to that. And basically, all top 3 management functions, so the highest ranking civil servants, all these functions have, from one day to another, become mandate functions. So all the people that had these functions, they lost their job, even though they had permanent positions. They were not fired. They kept keeping their salaries, and they were able to apply for their own position. But these are the positions which are open to anyone. There's no minimum age requirement. The only requirement is like 6 years managerial experience. As a result, we have talented people who have the age of 34, 35, and instead of looking at a career path of another 20 years before being in a top managerial position, they apply external assessments and they get in a job, even at a younger age, with a higher salary linked to their higher responsibilities.
And I guess that links back to that idea of getting diversity of thought and diversity of experience at different levels as well. Sorry, Fiona.
I just want to come back really quickly on that, because I think that's really important, because for a lot of people, career progression is really important. But I also feel it's really important to offer pay progression for people in their current roles, so that people don't feel that they have to, that's the only way to progress their pay. But I agree, for people that are really motivated by progression, then it's really important.
Yes.
My question is about the strategy of moving civil service posts out of London, and as a result, posts are not being advertised in London anymore. I just wondered whether the risks have been considered properly, and in terms of motivations and getting the best people for the job. Location shouldn't really matter, in my opinion. So I don't know, it's more a comment rather than a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me-
Fiona, did you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, if I make a couple of comments, I think it's really important that we do have people in the civil service that are based across the UK. I think that's really important in making sure that that's taken into account when we're developing policies and delivering services. I mean, I think there are still quite a lot of jobs that are advertised in London, so I still think there are opportunities. I think where we can be even better is really thinking about what skills do we need and have we got in each location, so that people can transfer between departments. So I talked about the Darlington Economic Campus. There's a lot of economists, policy advisors in that location, and because we've got 8 departments, it means that we can start to kind of build that skill set, and people, both externally and internally, it's easier for people to progress their roles there.
I mean, just to add to that,
Nicola.
so I was going to say, I mean, certainly one of the things we've seen post-COVID clearly is, people have moved out of London phenomenally and relocated across the country. So, pre-COVID, there was clearly a greater concentration of capability and talent in and around London, given, the majority of the public sector central offices are here. Post-COVID, obviously, people moved out of London, or during COVID, people moved out of London. As a result of that now, there is greater talent in a broader area across the country now, which is enabling not just government but private sector companies to benefit from. So we're this levelling up sort of policy that we keep hearing about is certainly, part of that is certainly from our perspective, because we're seeing, a broader range of talent in other locations outside of London.
I'd be really interested to hear what Eileen has to say on that, actually, just based on the sort of the geographic nature of the Philippines and whether that has an impact for you guys as well.
For our flexi-work arrangement, it is only within the Philippines, so you cannot be in Hong Kong or in Singapore to do your work. So you have to be within the Philippines in any of its islands.
So you can be based anywhere within the Philippines?
Yes, as long as it's within the Philippines.
I'm aware we've got 5 minutes, and we've got, could we do 3 questions? You can love me with the microphone. 3 questions, and then we'll come to answers. So one here, and one at the front, if that's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about recruitment, because obviously in the UK civil service, there's still that kind of, if you exam well, we'll give you a chance. And even a few of you have talked about, exams during the course of a job progression and stuff now, that's not necessarily always accessible. And there are loads of kind of kids who don't do exams well but are brilliant and would be great at the jobs. And have you thought about how to get those into the civil service?
Thank you. And then next question, is there a microphone?
Yeah, that's very loud, sorry. Yeah,
And then one at the front here, please.
yeah. So I was just going to ask at the beginning, there was a bit of conversation about culture fit, and I'm just thinking as we move towards a more innovative government, how we move away from the conversation of culture fit to more culture add. Obviously, there's a risk with culture fit that you just recruit in your own image, and actually we want people to come in. We've spoken about diversity of thought. So how do we start creating an environment where we can add to the culture instead of just asking people to fit in with it?
No, fantastic, thank you. And where's the third? The third microphone is there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mine's quite a general question, and you're all coming from quite different areas and contexts with some similarities and some differences. So it's generally, what's the most innovative solution that you'd like to see to recruiting talent between now and, say, 2030?
Thank you very much. So, to paraphrase, and I'm absolutely of that school. I don't have a degree. I'm terrible at exams. I definitely didn't ever expect to be doing the job that I do now. But how do you make that recruitment accessible? And how do we ensure that we are thinking about, I guess some of it comes down to the way that we're talking about the civil service, but how do we make it a space where people feel, number one, that they can apply and do well. And then I think probably linking to what the second question was, but how do we also build on that culture add? So it's not just fitting in with the culture that's there, but how do we actually add and make that culture much more accessible? I think if we go to those, then I'll come to the final question. So who would like to kick off?
Do you want me to
go on, Fiona?
Yeah, I'll just have I'm conscious of time, so I'll be really quick. I completely agree that we need to make sure our recruitment process really assesses the talent and the skills that we need, not historically what we've thought we've needed. And I reference, so for people that are not based in the UK, part of our recruitment process is, for example, a personal statement where people kind of have to write what I would describe as an essay to describe themselves. I'm really evaluating things like that because I'm just really interested in whether that actually adds value to the candidate and to the hiring manager. It means we get more diverse, better fit people, or whether we've just, because we've always used it, we're always going to carry on using it. So for me, it's that really challenge everything we do. What is the evidence that says this gets us, talented people from more diverse, with more diversity and with more diverse experience? In terms of the kind of culture fit, culture add, I completely agree. I could speak about this for ages, but just a couple of quick points. I think we really, when we're inducting people and orientating people and we're just our general how we work, we should be really careful about our use of in language and things that it's to your point that you have to come and learn about us, as opposed to kind of stripping away kind of all of those particular language tics and special things that we use. The other thing is we should encourage people to try things and fail. And I think that's another thing that lots of large organisations are not good at, but some are better than the public sector. Of course, we need to be careful we're using public money, but we should allow people to fail, particularly smallly, in a small way, and learn from that.
Yes. Go on. Nick, then Peter. Or Peter first.
Peter, please.
Peter, after you.
Okay, now, as a comment to the the first and the third question, I guess what I'd like to see as the single innovative thing for the upcoming years is really reducing the kind of, traditional bureaucratic selection process we still have, and enable a lot more flexible way of recruiting people, which also gives opportunities to people who are not good at passing exams and tests. And just last week, I had an interesting conversation with a colleague who's working in the private sector, and he told me, Peter, we're not doing any exams anymore. We're not doing any formal testing anymore. Based on the applications we get, we select a number of people for a 1-hour interview, not with the HR department, we're with the staff members they're going to work with, and based on these staff members' feeling on, we have a click with this person. in terms of attitude, yes, this is going to work, they recruit the person. We, as a civil service, as a public service in Belgium, we felt like we work with taxpayers' money. We have to be objective. And this is why, over the decades and the centuries, we've installed the system that seems to be almost foolproof to guarantee an absolute and objective idea on the candidate. Sometimes it delivers us a candidate that we feel like, well, I don't know, this is not the kind of person I like to work with in my team, but she or he has passed all the different exams, maybe because some people are good at passing exams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try to focus more on attitudes and competencies and what really matters.
No, thank you. I'm aware that I've got a red flashing light, but I do want to hear Nick and Eileen.
Yeah,
your final points.
I could take the last question. I don't think there is an innovative solution necessarily. I think there are some basic principles that can be applied. I think you can talk about innovation in terms of technology that can improve the experience that we've talked about, but I think the government right now, the civil service, when it comes to recruitment, there are some basic principles that are just not being applied when it comes to engagement, when it comes to branding, when it comes to marketing. If you look on LinkedIn alone, most of the departments have less than 150,000 followers on LinkedIn. And yet the government, the civil service, is the UK's largest employer. The alumni network alone would be in the millions. We're not tapping into that. They're not tapping into that. Tesco is one of the UK's largest private sector employers. They have nearly 1 million followers on LinkedIn. You know, so there are some basic principles and learnings around how the government can just engage that the private sector are doing that can just be adopted straight away. It's not innovative, it's just basic principles that actually would be game-changing for the public sector in terms of attracting, onboarding, you know, the journey and the experience of the interview, and to Peter's point, the retaining, you know. And I think, you know, innovation can be applied through technology, absolutely, but I think principles, basic principles, standard learning from the private sector around the marketing of the purpose, the vision, etc., I think that would be an absolute game changer right now.
Fantastic. Eileen, and then I'll just wrap up.
Thank you. For the Philippine Civil Service Commission, we are the gatekeeper for all the other government agencies. For you to enter, that's where we have the exams. And for each government agency, that's where all the other requirements will come in. So for you to enter, it's just a passing phase for one to enter and serve the Philippine Civil Service. So as I join my colleague here, I always say in my interviews to media, it is not easy being where we are. It looks like we are privileged enough, but it has long working hours. And if you are here to serve for personal gain, this is not for you, because really we have to serve the public in its truest form, public service.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you all as well. I'm aware that we are running slightly over. First of all, thank you to our wonderful panellists for their insight and everything that they've shared. I think for me, the top 3 things that I've taken away from this are that it's not just about the process, but we need to be using that process in order to find the right people, not just the ones who write the best application or pass the exams. We need to think about how we recruit, what we are saying to entice people to come in, but also how we then create a culture that allows us to retain them and also train them as well. And that innovation doesn't have to just be new things. It could be looking at what is already working well in different organisations and how we can adopt them into the work that we do. So thank you to our panel, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you.